Hello, Sally. I'm very pleased to be there again, okay, for the annual, let's say, interview every year between, let's say, you and Nextmodernity, okay, and we are quite pleased to be there. Now, it's a new time, it's a new change for training, learning, whatsoever. What I would like to know from you first, tell us in few words who you are.
I am the founder and organizer of iLearning Forum Paris, which has been held in Paris since the year 2000. Originally, this was a European show, but over the years, it's become more and more and more French. Okay, so it's become the French show for e-learning. And the idea of this show was to promote the use of digital technologies in the business of learning and training and apprentissage. That was the idea. And that's what I do. But I also do consulting work, and I also teach executives good written communication. So these are the things I do. And I have a farm, and I like to do a lot of other things as well. But this is central to my life, and here we are now in the back corridors of the show, having a little chat about what's actually going on.
In the digital world, in that perspective, I would like to understand from you, let's say, where is the training, learning is going from a professional standpoint? I'm not going to talk about the, let's say, the schools and the initial.
Not for the education, but for the business. You know, it was very funny. Do you remember when we back in digital in the old days, when it was first possible to do education on the internet? Everybody got very, very excited, and Wall Street got very excited because they said this is the killer app. The man who runs Cisco said, John Chambers said, that the consumption of the internet by education and training would make email look like a rounding error. On the back of that, there was a lot of hype about this being the killer app, and you and I know perfectly well that it wasn't. Now, one of the most problematic issues with IT people is that they tend to, when you have a hammer in your hand, everything looks like a nail. You know this. Now, when you take a process and you put it, you digitalize it or you dematerialize it, you need to make sure the process was a good one in the first place. Now, my fundamental issue with a lot of e-learning and what's happened is that we've taken a fairly bad process, a model that wasn't working anyway. The classroom, teaching, one-to-many, there's one guy who has all the knowledge and you guys sit there and swallow it. We took that and we turned it into an electronic business. That wasn't very clever because the model was a bit crap in the first place, So what's happening now is all of that is shaking out. All of that is coming up to the boil. It's all coming to the top now. But I would have told you the same thing in 1990, that this had to happen, because the actual model that we have of teaching is not an effective model for making people ready for the workplace, giving people the skills they need to succeed. There are far better ways of doing it than just teaching. And we've been very lax. We've taken an awful lot of good technology. We've created virtual classrooms. What is a virtual classroom? It's just as bad as a real classroom.
Since we need to give autonomy to people, how the training process is going to be impacted?
I think the T word, the training process is going to be annihilated. It's not going to be impacted, it's going to be annihilated. Training is what you do to children and animals, for a start. And when we're talking about adults and performance, I don't think we'll see much more training. And people will say, well, I'm learning, maybe. I'm learning. I'm learning.
By doing.
Learning by doing, and learning also through mistakes, because we know that the human being, we know this psychologically, the human being learns most from failure. Okay, so what we need to do is forget about training and think about learning, and we need to think about organizational learning. What happens in organizational learning is you have an organization that's capable of asking questions, now, because asking questions is really important. And if you look back at organizational learning theory, this is what we need to do with all the techniques that we have, is we need to say, what was the working theory? What happened? Why? What is the new working theory? What are we going to do differently? And this is where genuine learning takes place. That, as you know, is a sort of network conversation. It's got nothing to do with teachers and students. It's got a lot to do with dialogue and feedback loops. Because if you look at the systemics of learning, an organization has a mission, it's trying to get places, and it lives off feedback. It needs feedback. So we need to build in feedback loops, and we need to build in learning mechanisms that have got nothing to do with teaching, which have to do with conversations about what is our theory? Is our theory working? If it's not working, what is not working? What are we going to do differently? And how are we going to learn to do these new tricks?